Okay, so I'm taking a little bit of a break from my latest styrene build. Figure I'd get back into something I've been doing fairly regularly off and on for the last couple months here. Manufacturing a couple of pieces out of steel. As you can see, I've got fairly good articulation. This is my Wraith chassis. The cage for it is still right here. This is actually, this is the rear. So I haven't got the cage actually attached yet, but I've got a decent articulation on that. I've got a can of Coke on this tire, and if I shoot over here, I've still got a can of Coke under that tire. So this is what I've got just simply by adding a new skid plate. I've played around with the links a little bit. Took a couple of tries to sort of get the positioning right. Had to like fill in and weld a couple of holes back in when I didn't get them quite right. So this is basically what I took out. I've taken out this plastic thing. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of weight in the bottom of the truck. So I've manufactured a fairly simple skid plate. I'm going to go and try and put the engine up front on this, like the motor on the front end with the transmission. So I had this thing kicking around. This was supposed to go in my 8x8 build that's coming up. Oh, let's focus back. It's simply reducing transfer case from RC 4-wheel drive. But it didn't quite match the holes, and I wanted to take some length out of this truck, as I mentioned on that earlier video. So this is where I'm at with this. I'm going to see if I can get an engine mount up in the front engine compartment. I'll show you what I do with that too. Okay, so I've got this new skid plate in. All the 4 links are mounted actually to the skid plate, same as the standard wraith skid plate you've got. Time to put a transmission in this thing. And this is what I've got to work with so far. This is the existing front end on my Wraith, and like it's fairly solidly built. Like all of these cross members from here all the way across are all steel. A little plate in the front here. This is where most of my electronics would sit. Like I've got a BEC and winch controllers. Even my speed controller is big enough to fit up in here. But I'm gonna do something a little different on this build, and I've got a 2-speed transmission kicking around, and this motor. This is actually a Mamba Monster 2 motor. I've got the speed controller for this. I bought it as a kit just for shits and giggles, and I'm going to try and get this thing in here. I mean, I don't need 2 drive shafts on this, so I'll just steal the rear one here, and I'll see if I can actually put this in. My idea is to probably cut this existing stuff here and here and add and widen it here, because this won't fit in right now. Like it doesn't even come close to fitting in. But good thing about steel is you can sort of cut and paste it however you want. So I'll put a couple of plates in on the side here so I can screw it in from the side. RC 4-wheel drive 2-speed's got the screw mounting holes on this side, and it's also got some more on the other side, so I can actually mount this with probably 8 screws to hold it in place. I'm going to try and throw quite a bit of power through this thing. I mean, this is a 2200 kilovolt 1/8 scale motor, so it's just going to scream, and I want to hold this transmission as tight as I possibly can. Okay, so this is what I got so far. I haven't salvaged much other than this front little guard. This is actually where my winch usually sits. I've dropped a couple plates in here. They're actually screwed to the chassis here and here, and I've got another couple of pieces I'm going to actually weld underneath, and I'm going to screw it in underneath too. What I've got on the transmission is actually light's not as good in my one shop as it is upstairs. I've actually screwed a piece of metal to this side and a piece of steel to this side. That way I can throw a weld in here and one on the other side and firm this thing up, and then once I'm done that, I can actually cannibalize that last front end that I had and put a piece in here, probably come back, tie into this one, come back, tie into this one too. Same on the other side.
This should mount it fairly solid. Then I can put whatever I want for a bumper on the front of it again. I'll probably use the same pieces. I was quite happy with how it looked. I just needed to re-weld it back up. It's seen some serious abuse over time, so this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing so far. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm getting closer to being done. Well, it fits, and I think I might actually even get the lid back on. I'm actually kind of surprised I got all that underneath the hood without having to modify the hood at all. But a couple more tie-in points here and across on the other side, and then I can get a bumper. Okay, I got a bumper back on it. And this is basically how it looks inside. I've still got one or two more points I'm going to tie into these plates at the bottom, and I got to do a little trimming for the shocks, make sure they mount. Looking pretty good so far. I'm just hoping she's going to hold together once it's all said and done. Okay, so I got this thing put back together finally. I'm about ready to do some testing on it. I had it on the floor and ran it around a little bit. Figured I'd go over what I'm doing and show you guys how it actually runs. I've got some wire management left to do, and I've noticed that this motor's got way too much power for this transmission, so it slips out of gear quite often. This is just 2 pipe clamps, like your basic hardware pipe clamps that you can find at Home Depot or Home Hardware or Rona or wherever. I'm going to get a single pipe clamp so they don't have this big nut on the top. I've got another one underneath. So that's the one issue I've had so far. Another issue, my steering servo right here and my shifting servo here are a little closer than what I'd like. I mean, there is some clearance between them, but if I bounce too hard, the two of them are going to smack together. So I'm going to find a bell crank system, and I'll probably move this shifting or this steering servo further back in the truck, and that way it'll give me another ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch in here that I can use for articulation. The other problem I have is because of how I welded all of the sides on this right here, I need to get this further down to about here, and I think I'm actually gonna have to go inside the frame rails and do some modifications on the axle to get it inside, because the articulation on this right now isn't as much as I'm hoping for. I'm aiming to get at least 6.5 or 7 inches on one tire, and right now I've only got about 5.5. So if I droop the suspension a little bit more, change the angle, push it further back, I'll be able to get more movement out of my axles. And I'm going to do probably something similar on the back. This shock is still fairly upright. The more angle you get on it, the more motion you'll get on the actual shock. I don't need a lot of suspension in this. It's not going to be a fast rig. It's more power, tow, climb just about anything that's going to be in front of it. So I guess let's turn her on and see what she does. Okay, all humming. Yeah, that's a good sign. She is a little bit twitchy. I think I need to play with some of the throttle curves on it. But I don't think there's going to be any issue with power. She's got a lot of wheel speed. I think I'm actually throwing a pinion right now, so I'm getting a little bit of a squeal in the front end. All in all, I think it was a fairly successful modification. I'll try and get it out on the trail and maybe get you a couple of shots on in progress as how it works. Still a lot of, well, not really snow, but it's not a lot of time right now to get out and about. So hopefully I can do that in the next week here. Anyways, thanks for watching.